in the middle of that conversation. Otherwise, it just wouldn't make sense to folks.
Yeah.
Just give me just a few seconds here. Okay, we're good to go whenever you are.
Super. Thank you very much, Hope. Well, welcome, council, staff, and our public people that may be on the YouTube. I'm taking a look at it here. Welcome to the regular council meeting of Monday, March 8th, 2021. First is the opening of the council meeting, and it is open. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Late items, Hope. We got a couple of.
There was just a few circulated earlier today.
Yeah.
So item 9.1, Tourism Bowen Island has requested that the letter of support be removed. They're going to try for the second intake of funding for that program. Right. And then item 11.5 has been added to Councillor Morse's Trans Lake Mayor's Council update. And it's just a news release. Okay,
perfect. Thank you. So approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything else they want to add in the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands there. So I will move to approve the agenda and late items. Thank you, Rob. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll move on to public comments. How are we looking there, Hope? Sorry.
Sorry, I have no one registered on the speakers list tonight.
Okay, that's all right then. And we'll move down to the consent agenda. This is the shortest consent agenda I've ever seen.
I can't believe this.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, so
just that I'd like to pull one information item. 12.4, the Telus letter.
Sorry, okay, let's wait. What number was it? Sorry.
12.4.
12.4, okay.
And Gary, I would like to pull 12.1A.
12.1A, okay, that's Sue Ellen. Allison. 1 alpha, okay. Anybody else have anything that they'd like a little further discussion on? If not, we will approve the consent agenda. Once I get back there. Boy. The council approved the items as outlined in the March 8th, 2021 consent agenda and letters following, I guess, as amended. I'll move that.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And that's items removed from the consent agenda. Okay, well, let's go through those right now then in our new style.
Okay.
Do you want to do them in order or the order they were pulled?
It doesn't really matter to me. I'll do them in the order they were pulled. 12.4.
Sure.
Go ahead, Sue Ellen, that's yours.
Yeah, this is the letter from Ellen Coburn about Telus services. She's unable to get a landline in Deep Bay. And I just thought this was worth bringing up as a potentially core kind of service. I don't know if there have been any, if anybody has any more information about that, or are we losing landlines, or is Telus not maintaining landlines? Why is she not able to hook up again to landline? I'm wondering if anybody knows.
Yeah. Michael?
Sue Ellen, I caught this one too, and I actually spoke to the people at Shaw, and I forwarded that letter to Kirsten Ennemark at Shaw, and it kind of justified her. Now, I realize that a company as large as Telus reflecting a trend to move away from 947 numbers may not be being very cooperative, and they are also using a lot of contractors to do work on servicing. So I believe, I didn't hear from Kirsten that the 947 numbers were not going to be available, but I agree with you about a concern on this. So I have sent it to her, and I will follow up. I will follow up to see whether she can throw any more light on it. And I've probably been remiss, I didn't, but she does have a copy of this one. So I'm just making a note to myself to follow up with Kirsten and say, just can she throw any more light on this subject? And at least she can't speak for anyone else, but she could speak to Shaw to see that they're still supporting the 947 number. When I moved to Shaw for everything, Shaw also run my 947 number. Now, I'm sorry, this is not a pitch, it's just a statement of fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they can do that. But I'm going to find out more, because I hope this doesn't put our 947 number under threat. Whether you use it or not, lots of people do.
All right, good point, Michael. I'm going to go to Maureen first, then Allison, and Sue Ellen, if you're still in.
I wonder if there could be a bit of fact checking done on this.
Yeah.
Whether it's a matter of no landline is available or no landline with 947 is available. My understanding was that 947 was running into the max, and even additional landlines would have a different prefix. So it's possible something got lost in translation here. And
Possible.
checking with them on the base question, is a landline available, would be important.
Okay, Allison?
Well, yeah, I was just going to add, I wasn't quite sure from reading her letter if she tried to reactivate a 947 number that she used to have. And that may have already been given away to somebody else. And then the other is, in the old days, if you gave up your number, if you changed carriers, you had to change your phone number. And like if you change cell phone carriers, you ended up with a new phone number.
Yeah.
Now your phone number is your phone number. So like we've got the same cell phone number and we've had two different carriers, and we've got our house number is with Shaw, and we were able to take the same house number. In the old days, we would have, if we'd gone with Shaw's telephone, we would have had to have a new number. So I would guess that means that people that had 947 numbers and have done like we've done, and Michael's done and put them with Shaw, they've kept their number. So the population is, the numbers are busy. Yeah. So I think that Maureen's idea about fact checking was going to be the other thing I was going to say. So I'm guessing that there's no more 947 numbers available, but if she wanted a landline, she could get one.
Well, this is, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'll just jump in here. That was my question, was whether anybody had information that could confirm this. My question was more about from the emergency point of view, because when the power goes out, landlines still work. And
my Shaw line works too.
And seniors who don't have cell phones, and have some up the hill in our neighborhood that I keep in touch with through various means. And if their landline goes down, that's a sort of signal to everybody that there's a problem. So I just wanted to find out about that and ask whether we have any information, but it sounds like Michael's going to find out information. And depending on what he finds out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Rob?
Yeah, maybe Liam, you can give maybe a bit of direction on this, but instead of us calling Sean here and there, can I just suggest somebody from staff maybe give Telus a call and see what's going on, and then we know if we need to take action going down the road on this issue, or if it even is an issue, just so it's centralized, we get one response and not everybody's pulling on all over the place.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Rob. I just wonder if somebody could contact Ellen and just see whether it's been, does anybody know whether this has been fixed? It might have been all fixed and been just a misrepresentation or
we don't know. We only have this phone number, this letter in front of us, and that's why I'm asking for information, because it could be significant. So I think that's a good suggestion, especially if we still have anybody in the emergency position, but I gather Jen is on her way soon.
Yeah,
If Liam could
it's
check, that's great.
very serious, and I heard a rumor that Telus was just not putting in any more landlines on Bowen, but she already had one, so I don't know what that.
No,
would
I
be
think
with
she
an
must
issue.
have let it go. And she wanted to reactivate it according to the letter.
We don't know, and we don't need to take a whole lot of time on this.
No,
I just
no.
want to ask the question, and I move that staff contact Telus to find out if landlines are still available on Bowen Island.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Rob. And any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That's a good one. Thanks for bringing that up, Sue Ellen. And the other one was Allison and
Hope, from a formality, do we need to remove
12.1
receipt?
alpha.
Do we
Sorry.
need to remove receipt of that last piece of information? Or because we've acted on it, it's okay?
No, I don't think anything further is required.
Okay, all right. I just pulled 12.1A because I wanted to just draw it to people's attention. Any
Mhm.
members of the public that might be watching, and as it's about the community economic development plan and the survey that's out.
Okay,
So
yes.
would people please go onto the Muni website and link into the survey and fill it out?
All right.
Thanks. So I'll move receipt of the news release under 12.1A.
Right, I'll second that, Allison. And all in favor, aye? Good. That motion is passed, and we'll move on. Those are only the two items. And we're going to go on to delegations, which we have none, Hope. And right into bylaws. So 7.1, amendment to the planning fees bylaw and building bylaw. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development, dated February 22nd, 2021. Daniel, it's all to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Let me just start my screen here. Right. Does that all work?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have tonight for your consideration two amendment bylaws to amendment bylaws for our planning fees bylaw and our building bylaw. In both cases, minor changes to the fees and charges schedules. So this is following the Bowen Island municipality has a policy for guiding principles for planning and budgeting decision-making. And under the fees and charges section, it says that we will review on a regular basis our fees and charges, review them annually. And then policy 8.1 is that fees for development-related functions will be set at levels to recover full costs. So over the last sort of 6 months and more recently in 2021, we've been doing a review and sort of monitor of what fees and charges we have and where we see demand and where our charges don't match. So I have this list of amendments between the two bylaws. So first of all is that we've noticed between our planning applications fee and our building bylaw fee, we have different charges for covenant amendments. So the building bylaw has different categories with different fees, and our planning applications bylaw just has a straight covenant amendment fee at a much lower rate. And so the first change we want to bring is just to change all the fees to be the higher amount, the $350 for an amendment or a release of a covenant. The next category is one that hasn't come up much lately, but does come up from time to time, and that's providing comfort letters for properties. And so that's something the municipality does for sale of primarily commercial or multifamily properties. And we have a set template for it. And essentially it's going through our records and saying there aren't active notices against the property. There's not like record of non-compliance. There's not warnings from the fire department. There's not ongoing issues with the property. And so we have the set template that we provide to people to provide comfort as part of a sale. And often they're required as a lender in a commercial transaction. And this is something that generally, they come up when a commercial property is for sale. That's when we'll get requests, and the people requesting expect to pay a fee, and currently they don't pay a fee. We provide them. The next category is similar. It's property record searches. So this happens with often residential property sales, where people are calling and wanting records from the property file, and so we have been recently more actively limiting it to just the listing agent, so not dealing with the selling agent as well as the listing agent and whoever else has a letter of agency from the owner, but saying for a sale, we just want to deal with the listing agent one time to provide copies of the files. So you have records of the permits on file, but often these can be quite time consuming, especially for older properties with large property files. And we've been trying to as well work with realtors, and the on-island realtors have been good in working with us, but sometimes we still get requests from off-island realtors who sort of call up and say, I want you to copy the whole property file. Could you email it to me, by noon for this sale I'm going to do? And so it's sort of an educational process. I think I'm back a stage. The next one then is another thing that's come up through COVID, is that our building bylaw has the application form as an attachment in the bylaw, and it says this is the application form. And through COVID, we've been trying to change our applications to be online, to be fillable PDFs, or through the business license, we've been looking to put business license numbers as part of the application form. And so we want to change the building bylaw so that staff can amend the building permit application form without needing to actually amend the bylaw each time we want to make a change. And then the final one is one that's come up in the building department, would be the ability to issue foundation and excavation permits. And I guess our building bylaw currently has an ability to issue excavation permits. So that's somebody to essentially do the site prep, do the digging for the foundation. And we'd like to go the step farther and be able to issue foundation permits. So these have provisions in the proposed bylaw and in other communities' bylaws that says if you don't then get the building bylaw, or you don't then get the building permit, you have to agree to essentially fill it in, restore the grade of the site. And we've looked at some other communities that have essentially set criteria for when they would issue the foundation permit. And often it involves things like it's for builders who have experience building on Bowen, have a business license, don't have records of infractions in other jobs they've done. And then it would be specifically in projects where we've already done like the planning review checks. We know that the zoning meets, the project meets the zoning, it meets the setbacks, it meets the use, it meets the size, but maybe that, all the step code information isn't in yet. So maybe they haven't completed that, or all of the paperwork isn't there yet to authorize the building, but it's the ability to let builders start the work. So start the foundation, start the those initial steps before all the paperwork is complete for the actual completed building. And we would charge a fee then for the foundation permit and establish a fee for the excavation permit. So this would be like a service we would offer. There would be an initial fee, but you'd be able to then start building earlier. So I think that's my rundown of all the changes that are proposed. The recommendation for staff is to give each of the two amendment bylaws for second and third reading. And then we would return it to the first April meeting for adoption. And I'm open for any questions.
All right.
Sharing.
Very much. Daniel, that I think that's really progressive. So that foundation and excavation, generally speaking, that would just be involved in the building permit process. But if they wanted to get going early, then you would give them either or those, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
Which is that's a terrific idea. That's really nice. It doesn't hold people up if there isn't issues involved. And just at number 3, the $75 to start, and so that's a minimum, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, and then $75 an hour after that. So if you just actually get a permit and somebody works on it, is it not going to be $150?
Sorry, no. So I think in the actual bylaw itself, it's clear it's like $75 and then or $75, then $75 for an additional
hour.
Time. Yeah, I don't have the wording in front of me, but it would be $75, and then if it takes more than an hour, then it's another $75.
Oh, so that $75 includes that first hour.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's a little clarification in there. Thank you. I thought it was a minimum of $75. Okay, that's good. Okay, so hands up. I've got Allison first.
Okay, Daniel and I have been emailing back and forth today. I don't think $150 is enough for the comfort letter. Looking at what some of the other munis charge. And I also think we should, I'm not quite clear on the difference between the comfort letter and the property record search if it's a residential property. And my third question is, if somebody wants to just come in and stand at the front counter and look at the file and get it pulled out and maybe get the odd photocopy made, they get charged $75 too. Yeah,
I mean, I guess I'll take those in order. I think I was pricing the comfort letter sort of roughly looking at other communities, and then also in relation to our other charges. So thinking of our development permit is 325, I think, but that involves like a site visit and referrals and writing a report in the permit itself. And it was like a comfort letter is comfortably, you know, less than half of that amount of work.
So 2 hours worth of time?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably more than that, but in that realm.
Yeah, so I can't remember, I can't find my email where I sent the link to what West Van was charging, but I thought it was quite a bit more than that.
Yeah, I think they were like 200 or 300.
Yeah. And then, because if you're making copies, so tying it to freedom of information, what do we charge for freedom of information?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to pull up the bylaw.
I mean, it shouldn't be any less than that for the first, because that's by time, right? Or is that by document copied?
There's a threshold, and then I'll just pull it up here.
Some of the thinking, I know sorry, Allison, just for the property record search, I did look at, a number of other places, some of which charge you, per page or per like 15-minute increment or a number of different ways. And I just thought that the more complicated it is, the less likely we are to actually charge it to people. Like if it's more work to do up the charge than it is.
No, I agree with that. But if somebody walks in and just wants to look at the file at the front counter, they're going to pay $75 too?
Yeah, I mean, more realistically, we'll have a threshold, and it's like if a listing agent is listing the file and wants to look at it, they'll book an appointment, they'll pay the fee. If it's somebody's like, I've just bought my house and I wonder if you have a permit, we're going to pull it for them.
Why? They didn't do their due diligence beforehand, and if they've done it beforehand, they would have had to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain element of like people own their house and they just want to know what records we have on it. Yeah, I mean, that's my initial thought on the direction we would take, is it's for like people who want a systematic search as opposed to the homeowner wondering about something in their file.
And if the real estate agent just walks in and wants to stand and look at the file on the counter, they're going to pay the $75.
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody should pay the $75. We need money.
For the FOI, Councilor Morse, it's the first 3 hours is covered for locating and retrieving records. And then after 3 hours, we would do a fee estimate, and it's $7.50 per quarter hour.
Wow.
And then there's other
That's a
fees
bargain.
there's other fees for like copying and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Those were my comments.
Thank you, Allison.
I'm certainly in favor of increasing the fees.
Yeah,
I'm
here.
not going to vote against it unless everybody else wants to raise the number.
Okay, Rob.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Gary. As the mayor mentioned, the foundation permit, I think, is great. Anything that we can do, especially working with reputable builders, where we can reduce building costs, and delays obviously being a big building cost, I think is a good thing, and it's going to lead to a bit more affordable housing, lowered cost of building. So I support that. And also just, Daniel, the general trend of cost recovery on things where, in the past, probably we've paid through taxes, subsidize some of this, and the ultimate beneficiary, I think, needs to be paying their fair share. So I trust the fee increases are going to cover all those costs. And so I'm not going to go into the weeds on what the costs are there, but I'm going to be supporting this. And I think it's a great way for us to be going with reducing some bureaucracy in spots, but also making sure that, the people that are using the service are paying for it, not the general taxpayer. So I'll be supporting this moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Good points, Rob. Sue Ellen?
Similar. I'll just make a couple of points. One of them is that your conclusion there refers to some other development variance permit applications or something. But anyway, that's just a typo. I agree with Rob. I was going to say about the fairness. Why would current residents subsidize new construction? And so that's part of that reason that I'll be supporting this bylaw. I like the policy that says we're going to cover the fees. So I think it would be good if you can clarify the bit about whether you come to the counter, and so that people know when do I pay a fee and when don't I, what, so there's partly so there's no loopholes, I suppose, but also just so residents know that they're welcome to come in if this is going to be there, you know, so that people don't avoid coming in because they might pay a fee. I'd like people to feel invited to be in touch with their records and open government and that kind of thing. And the other reason I'm glad we're updating these fees is because taxes are going up, and as it is, I don't want taxpayers to pay more subsidy for new development and things like that. But I'm in favor, and what I hear from Hope suggests that maybe there's some other fees that we should be updating as well. $7.50 per quarter hour sounds low, even for Freedom of Information, because they've got 3 hours ahead. Anyway, that's another topic. I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. And Michael, over to you.
Daniel, can I ask, if I get a comfort letter, is that a court admissible document?
I believe it is to some extent. So we have, like, when I first started here, I brought a template that we used in Kitimat, and I had our municipal lawyer vet it as well. So it tends to be quite cagey. Like, at a certain point, I wonder how much comfort we're providing people, because it's a little, you know, it's like we don't have any things in the record. It is like cut and dry, but typically they ask for things like, is there, you know, are you aware of anything? And we're like, as of this date, we're not aware of.
Okay, Daniel, look, I totally support what you're trying to do. I'm just telling you that by commercial rates, anything like that it is almost a laughably small amount to put you to the trouble to do this for $150. I commend what you're trying to do, and I think what I'm really asking is that it covers the real cost, and whether it's comparable with other people, well, yeah, that's relevant. And we know we don't want to put the cost of buildings up or slow things down, whatever else. But I have to tell you, some of those figures, if you walked into a downtown or any lawyer's office anywhere and asked for a court admissible document, it would cost you a darn sight more than $150.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just saying, please don't be shy. I absolutely support it. If this is what you want to do, you've got my support. But please, let's have our cost covered in every fair way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Anybody else out there? Comments? I would just close it with Allison. You brought up a good point, and Sue Ellen. I think, Daniel, as long as you're happy with that subjectivity, because it is kind of subjective of if you're going to charge somebody to look at a thing or if you're not. So that's got to be your comfort level in your organization. You're happy with that. I'm happy with it. We definitely have to cover our costs. I think this will be a good step going there. Hopefully it will. When is the next, how often would you look at these costs, Daniel?
Well, our policy says annually. So what I try to do is just having a running, like we keep a running record going of changes that we want. And then I try to batch them so we're not, you know, coming all the time. But I know in general, in the municipality, we've talked about trying to do a consolidated fees and charges bylaw. So pulling the fees and charges out of all of our bylaws and doing one. And that would be another opportunity, I think, when we would be reviewing just generally our fees and charges.
That might streamline it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, if there's no other discussion, I'm going to read the recommendation that is that bylaw number 535/2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Development Application Fees Bylaw 484/2019, amendment bylaw number 535/2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and that bylaw number 536/2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Building Bylaw number 489/2019, amendment bylaw number 536/2021, be read a first, second, and third time. I will move that. Looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Michael, I got you there. And any further discussion on this? If not, I'll ask all in favor. Aye.
Aye.
And I think that's got everybody. Thank you. That was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to staff reports and a development variance permit DVP 11/2020 for 310 Salal Road, and that's Robyn Fenton. And Daniel Martin, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the next item I have on the agenda, as the mayor said, is a development variance permit application at 310 Salal Road. That's located in Salal, right next to Josephine Lake and just off of Sunset Drive.
Daniel, you're disappearing.
Oh. Can you hear me okay?
Ladies,
Now I
that's
can.
good now, yeah.
It cuts out a little bit. Seems when you turn your head, maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, so we have a development variance permit at 310 Salal Drive. The property is in the RR3B zone and located right next to Josephine Lake and just north of a municipal park. And the applicant has proposed an accessory building on the site and the proposed workshop garage to be located within 3 meters of the property line when the zoning requires a 7.5 meter setback. The property itself is larger, but as shown in this map, a large amount of the property is covenanted. So it's covered by a variety of environmental covenants. So there's a small area for the house and the septic field in the yard, and then a cleared area for a parking area where they would wish to site the garage. So here's showing the location of the site with the property line and the park being immediately starting right next to the cleared area, sort of a little rocky outcrop. Or when we look a wider view, you can see across to where the house is in the garage location. With this application, staff reviewed, and the initial application was that the building be 1.2 meters, I believe, from the property line, and staff indicated that we wouldn't support that reduction of the setback given the proximity to the park, but that we would support a 3 meter setback. So similar to if it's an SR2 zone side property line, we thought was consistent with our other zoning. And given that sort of the topography of the park, that the impact is fairly limited from a building going in. So you'd only see it from the park if you've actually climbed that little rock outcrop on the side, at which point you're sort of looking down into the house and the cleared parking area. Anyway, so a garage being in that location wasn't having a major impact on the park. So the staff recommendation is that notice be given that the variance permit be considered at the meeting of April 12th and that council authorize staff to give notice. And then I'm open for any questions. I'll just stop.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. This is Kathy Alonso property.
Yes.
It's very, very odd shaped piece of property, and there's certainly not much of a building envelope there. Why is every boundary 7.5 meters on this property?
Yes. So in the rural zone,
Side lots are usually a little less.
Not
Yeah,
in
so-
RR3.
in the rural zone, they're
I
all
know.
7.5. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'll get questions here. I see Allison, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, it's not a piece of park that anybody ever uses. It's an example of a subdivision that was done under highways before we incorporated, where the applicant just gave away whatever they couldn't build on as park. So anyhow, it's not something I don't think I've ever seen anybody on, nor would they be able to get to it because they'd have to hike up and hike down a cliff and over the side of it. And the road is on the other side of the park. So it's not park per se. It's just green space.
All right. Is that it, Allison? Thank you.
Yeah.
Ellen?
Thank you. Yeah, I look at park as also a place for people, but also as a place for nature. So I think it is park. It's designated as park and it's defined as park, and that means it's a home to nature. But besides that, my question is, and assuming that conservation envelope near Josephine Lake and the limited building area, if we grant this development variance permit, will any further natural land be disturbed?
Daniel?
No, so it will be built entirely on that gravel parking area that's already cleared and graded.
And the second part of my question then is, if we don't grant this development variance permit, will natural area be cleared?
Could be. Put your map back up, Daniel.
I'm asking the planner.
I mean, I guess it's hard to sort of say, does that show up okay?
Yep.
It's hard to say what the applicant would do if the variance was not granted. Like theoretically, the workshop could be moved so it's entirely out of the setback and sort of immediately next to the house. I don't know if that's how they would proceed, or they would reduce the scale of it, or that they would maybe site it further back into more of the cliff that isn't quite covenanted.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I can predict.
Okay, I can see that you wouldn't be able to answer that, but thank you. That's helpful. My comments are that parkland is also affected by noise and lights, and could be other things as well. So, usually I'm not in favor of encroaching on setbacks when there isn't a strong need for that. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote about this. Thank you.
All right, thanks to Ellen, and over to David.
Thank you, Gary. I'm going to vote in favor of this for all the reasons that Daniel said and that Allison pointed out. I know that it's parkland, and yep, good for nature. It's right between that house and the road, so it's not some place where people will be partying or picnicking. But what's great here is they're just building a garage on top of an area that's already graveled. So, there's no damage to any natural land at all. It's just, and in terms of the effect on the park, or on wildlife, it's hard to imagine that there could be any. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and over to Michael.
You're muted, Michael.
Sorry, in line with what David said, this is going on an existing gravel path, and knowing this lot, it is a very irregular lot. It's going to be hard to realize how this would be accommodated without. And I see no disturbance here. I also see basically no real visibility from anybody else either. So it seems a quiet, discrete area, and it's building on a already existing gravel lot, and I certainly am prepared to support it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And that looks like it for any comments. Is that you, Allison? Do you want to come in again?
No, I was just going to say, does somebody need to read the notice or the recommendation?
Sure, you can go ahead and read that if you want.
Oh, I was waiting for Hope to pop up.
I can read it. I was about to jump in. I can read it.
What a bunch of chickens.
So that notice be given that council will be considering the issuance of development variance permit DVP 11/2020 for the variance of the side yard setback for 310 Salal Road, legally described as Lot B District Lots 1547 and 6618, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan BCP 11242, PID 025-942-085 at the April 12th, 2021 meeting of council, and that council
hang on. Can I just say, I think right at the beginning, you have to say 2021. I think you said 2020.
Is it from last year or this year?
It's an older application.
It is 2020.
And so there was a typo in the first agenda.
Thank you.
That's my mistake, yes.
Okay.
So that council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of development variance permit DVP 11/2020 in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to all properties within 100 meters of the legal boundary of 310 Salal Road, legally described as Lot B, District Lots 1547 and 6618, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan BCP 11242, PID 025-942-085.
Thank you.
I'll move that.
Thank you, Allison. And a second. Okay, there's a Michael. Thank you, Michael. And any further discussion on this? I think I know that property, and that's extremely rough. I don't think there's going to be too many people picnicking, as somebody said up there. And I think it's not going to be very invasive by any stretch of the imagination in the difference here. So I will ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor of the
Thank you.
notice.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. And is that all of them, Hope? Unanimous? Thank you.
Yes, correct.
Well done. So the correspondence, 9.1 has been pulled. And we're going to go on to reports of commissions. So here's the minutes of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee meeting held February the 16th. And the Coastal Development Permit Area.
So
Council.
there's two recommendations coming out of that. Sorry, I'll just jump in, Mayor Ander.
Yes.
The first item, Councillor Fast prepared a report to accompany the recommendation.
Yes.
And then the second is the work plan, and the attachment is there, and the recommendation that it just be received for information. So Councillor Fast can take the lead on the first item.
Yeah, okay. Is everybody okay with that? You understand that?
Yep.
Okay, it's just split in two parts. So I'm just going to jump in here. I was, to say the least, I was a little disappointed to see this come up. And from this committee, as you remember, with the other one we had up on white sails there, the committee got involved with that. And I did make a comment at the time that I thought it was a little outside the purview of the Parks Rec and Greenways Commission. So this also is kind of out that way. But I went back and I looked at both the videos on both those meetings. There was one on January 19th, another one on 16th of February. I couldn't quite find the real reason why this was moved forward. But I still say that it's not within the mandate of that committee. I would have rather them, or if we do, maybe send it over to the Environment Committee, Environment and Climate Change Committee. I think it would have been much better received coming from that, because like I say, it's still out of the purview of the outside of the purview of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Committee. Having said that, there on that committee, Sue Ellen's on it, obviously, and also at some points there was 2 members of staff on there, and I'm puzzled that this didn't come up. There was some discussion among the members of the committee that this was sort of out of, I explained that it was outside the purview, so they were a little bit confused about, well, I wouldn't say they were confused about why it was going forward. They had really good reasons for it going forward. And, but there was some discussion about how to move it forward. So they came up with this sort of shorter recommendation, and it was up to Sue Ellen to put together some reasoning for it. Personally, I think it's an unbelievably difficult, this development permit area bylaw. The DP for the entire shoreline of Bowen Island would be extremely hard to do. I think it's going to take up a tremendous amount of staff time. And I think there's such complications in there. There's private property, there's government strips, there's crown land. And I don't really see, in my mind, what the urgency for it is, because if anybody's going to develop in that strip, they're going to have to go through a DVP process, and a full environmental scan is going to be done on the property. So it's not like we're not protected. And I see the merit. I see the merit in doing something a little bit more inclusive, I guess, but I also see that it's going to take up a tremendous amount of staff time. And anyway, I was surprised that it came out of that committee. So I think that's about it. You know, we have shoreline protection up to 100 feet. And like I say, if anybody wants to get into that 100 feet, then they have to get involved with a DVP, and everything's taken care of. So I don't see the urgency right now. And I'm not happy with this going ahead the way it is. And on that happy note, I'm going to send it over to Sue Ellen.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor
you.
Ander. Yeah, I'll just note that in response to your concerns that I'm looking at the terms of reference for the committee, and it includes wording like provide advice and make recommendations to council regarding the location and development of parks, trails, and greenways and outdoor recreation opportunities. And greenways are all kinds of natural areas connected. You could think about them as wildlife corridors or as places along creeks. Sometimes they have trails through them and sometimes they don't, but they're can be on private land. So that's from our official community plan. And just referring to my, anyway, so I think this is within the purview of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways. They're supposed to also assist staff in identifying an existing and potentially needed parks, trails, and greenways on Bowen Island, and assist in planning these things, which kind of involves figuring out where they might be. Anyway, I put a little report in your into the agenda, our agenda. And most of the text in this report comes from our official community plan. And so this is also where greenways are defined, in case anybody's wondering, because we did, at the time that the official community plan was last updated, there was a draft greenways policy that was referred to by the planners. And it was supported by the public participation. So I just, on the report, there's a number of writing in green. These are, or blue, whatever color that is. This is objectives such as to protect the natural and scenic values of the coastline, that protect the rural maritime atmosphere of the island, to protect coastline habitat areas for marine life. And you can read the rest of them. And I actually have a whole page of other ones from, these are just like the highlights. This is lots of information like this in the official community plan. And as you know, that's our direction for the community and for council over the long term. And I just wanted to mention, in the most recent approved copy of the island plan, the version that I have here is 2019. And B1, priority B1 includes strengthen, the key point at the top, strengthen our infrastructure and ecosystems through municipal actions. And B2, safeguard our infrastructure and ecosystems through intergovernmental relations. And B3, protect our unique island identity. And these are all things I think referred to in the report. And I'll just go into a little bit of David Attenborough land for you here. And if you think about young people today and what they're saying, our house is burning, we're in a climate emergency, and we're in a biodiversity emergency as well. Extinctions are climbing. And I won't go into a whole long lecture here, but are we a sustainable island? Yes, we've been setting aside the odd park, and in fact, that's great. We've been setting aside parks, nature reserves, and little areas, but are we living in harmony with nature, or are there changes we need to make for ongoing well-being? The whales and dolphins have returned. Do we want to keep them? Here's an article came out that I saw today. Economic benefits of protecting nature now outweigh those of exploiting it. Global data reveal. So I'm not going to talk to you about what Gary called the 100-meter setback, or the 100-foot setback. That's a maximum 30 meters, often reduced depending on how close the neighboring houses are. And it's just for buildings. There's nothing protecting any area from being cleared, like the gravel parking pad in the last property that we looked at the images of. There's nothing to protect the plants there, the natural drainage, the sand and gravel that might find its way to the beach to be spawning grounds for little silver fish that come in the waves and lay their eggs there. Those are the ones that the salmon eat. Those are the salmon that the whales eat and the seabirds. So anyway, I just wanted to, alligator, lizards, songbirds, butterflies, migrant wildlife of all kinds, salmon, whales, some of the big dragonflies, the seabirds in the winter. All of these things feed on part of our ecological processes. And we currently don't have any protection for that important interstitial space between the interior of the island and marine. And so I just think about the processes. I think about the wildlife. I think about the well-being of people into the future when we've got these known crises and we've got these objectives in our community plan. And and we've even got protecting ecosystems in our island plan, or the last approved version. And so this is why I thought it was worth supporting this recommendation from one of our advisory committees, long-running advisory committees, about protecting nature. So that's where we're at, and I'll complete there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. And go on to Maureen, please.
Thanks, Gary, and thank you, Sue Ellen, for your report and for your comments. I just want to point out to Council that the island plan that we have on our desk at the moment, that we are all reviewing in draft form, actually lists under B1 something quite specific, which is for ecosystem protection. Point A is to identify possible tools for ecosystem protection, and point B is to develop an ecosystem protection policy. So given that that's been in the island plan in an earlier version, and now is specifically articulated as developing an ecosystem protection policy, I think we have to give this a bit more standing than some might be prepared to grant. However, I am concerned about this coming from a committee. I think that the appropriate place for this kind of direction to come is from Council through the island plan. So while I agree that ensuring ecological and aesthetic shoreline assets is essential for an island community, I don't like the process here. I think that the committee was probably quite aware that there was something a little irregular about what they were doing. So if this comes to a vote on the recommendation, I will very regretfully vote against it. But when it comes to the approval of our strategic plan, I will support it as part of the strategic plan, because that's where we take into consideration all of the other objectives that we have for the island, and where we consider the costs and where we consider the impacts on staff. My comments.
Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate what you're saying, and I feel exactly the same way. I think we have to look at the impact on the staff, etc. But yeah, I'm with you 100% there. And the next one is David Hawking.
Thank you, Gary. And I also want to thank Sue Ellen for bringing this forward. But I do agree with, well, basically all the points that Maureen has made about this. And it is sitting there in our plan, and Sue Ellen's name is beside it. My own and shoreline protection is really important for all the reasons that Sue Ellen raised. And it's true that the DV people can apply for a DVP so we do get a chance to look at that if people are going to encroach on the 30 meters. But Sue Ellen makes a good point that it's not just about houses. And the other point that I also agree with was that a whole bunch of work was done on that Tunstall Bay home that was within the 30-meter zone. And then it came before us as a DVP, and we really had no alternative. So I am in support of this idea. I think it's important, but I'm concerned about staff time. So I guess I'm just thinking on the fly here that when we complete our working on our plan, that we figure out whether we have time to do this or not, whether staff have time to do this or not. I really have no idea as to how difficult or complex this is. I just simply don't know that. So I'd like to have a discussion about how hard it would be, how difficult, and whether we have any staff resources to do that right now, or whether we have to move it later on. But it is important and it is in our plan. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And over to Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I mean, we've seen a couple of these issues come up over the last couple of years. I mean, I was really challenged with that trolley system they built off of Hood Point to get right down to the water there. And I kayak a lot along the shoreline. And, you know, it's one of the amazing things that we still have natural shoreline around Bowen. There's that is very rare. And I do worry that it is disappearing with developments. I've seen a couple of developments on the north side where they cut everything right down to the water. So I think it's an issue we need to deal with. And as you know, it's been brought up by another couple of councils as part of our policies to look at this. We are also part of a coastal greenway system that attaches a bunch of different waterways around Gambier, Bowen, all the way up to Squamish along a greenway system. So I don't have a problem with this coming through parks and trails. What I have a bigger problem with is the wording of the recommendation, which is to create a development permit area bylaw to protect Bowen Island coastal areas. That's a pretty big step to go to staff and ask them, let's create this bylaw right now. I would definitely like to know a bit more information. You know, is this really going to make a significant difference? As some other councils have brought up, what's the cost implications? Are we maybe just layering on top of layering here? So maybe, you know, a suggestion moving forward is that maybe we do something along the lines of that. We ask staff to report back to council on the feasibility, benefits, and logistics of this type of a bylaw moving forward. So we get a bit of a clear picture of, is it needed? What's the, you know, what are the costs and the demands of staff going to be? And what are some of the positives and negatives to this type of a bylaw before we proceed into actually telling staff to go and prepare the bylaw? So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Allison?
So just picking up on Rob's point, that was one of my first questions. What are we asking staff to do? It's a pretty open-ended statement, and
Well, that's it. Yeah.
you don't ask somebody to go and do something without having some discussion as to just what the problem is you're trying to solve and what the solutions would be. And then I remember also, if this is supposed to implement policy 73 from the OCP, the wording doesn't match policy 73. And policy 73 does note that it would have to be an amendment to the plan. We don't have a development permit area for the coastal areas. So it's not just preparing a DP bylaw section in the land use bylaw, it's also amending the OCP, and both of which would be, I think, a fairly difficult, long, contentious, and process. Remembering the environmentally sensitive areas bylaw, and that is a DP area that is, you know, authorized in the OCP, but that bylaw was extremely contentious and very difficult and never did get passed. We've got, as a development variance permit, if you're going to be within 30 meters, you've got to provide environmental information. And certainly if any rezonings were done, we could request the environmental information and put covenants on those undeveloped areas. And then the other is mention of a policy, which I think is what the island plan is referring to, a policy is very different from a bylaw or an amendment to the land use bylaw. And the other is just the amount of work that staff already has on their plate. They've got a site alteration bylaw on their plate.
Yeah.
And I think some of that bylaw could deal with some of the concerns that are being raised here. So I'm not in favor of adding this to anybody's work plan at this point.
Okay, thank you, Allison. And back to Sue Ellen.
Thank you, councillors. I just wanted to fill you in on a couple of things. Number one, the committee is not aware that it's supposed to only act on referrals from council because the terms of reference are open-ended. It's supposed to help with planning. And so that's just something to think about when we're thinking about the committees. And is that really what council wants, is for committees to be restricted to only acting on referrals? Because that was something that was in place at one time and was not possible. Can I also say that the committee was not aware that we had a draft island plan in the works, and I didn't bring it up because it's in closed meetings and we don't have a draft that's out there for the public. So how could the committee be aware? So that's why I went back to the 2019 one. And having now talked about it though, I'm open to deferring this motion until we've got an approved island plan in front of us, if that's what the committee, if that's what council would prefer.
Okay,
Over.
thank you, Sue Ellen. Maureen, back to you.
There was a stepwise process involved in our thinking, and it was to initially identify potential tools for ecosystem protection, and then to be thinking about a policy. It may make more sense to be thinking about that first step rather than going straight to policy or to bylaw, to understand more about what the options are. Because I think that the recommendation as is a bit of a big hammer, and
Yep.
I don't think there's anybody on this council, Sue Ellen, who would be opposed to seeing greater ecosystem protection put in place. But there are just some challenges here, and forcing a vote on a recommendation at this point, I think, would lead to an unhappy result. So even a deferral at this point.
That's what I'm offering.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Rob?
Yeah, this question to Liam. Liam, just so we can learn a bit more about what this kind of development permit area would look like, maybe some examples of other communities that have done this, if it's successful. Could council get a bit of an idea on the logistics of this? It's so obviously we're not moving forward on this, but also a bit of, like, there's so many questions on whether this is even a useful tool or whether it's going to duplicate work that staff have to do. Is there some kind of report that you can come back to us? It's not going to take up a lot of staff time, just to give some general recommendations about moving ahead, and if this is a way to move ahead.
Yeah, Rob, I think that's a good point. We can definitely look at that from the staff side of things, and just if it's being deferred, we can then speak to that about what the time commitment might look like and the workload for it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we just need a lot more information before we dive fully into developing something like this. And if we have a bit more background and this is going to be the best way to get to it, that'd be good for us to know at this stage. So
Did you have some wording around that, Rob? I think you said feasibility logistics.
Yeah, I was just scrolling something down here, but basically that council directs staff to report back to council on the feasibility, benefits, and logistics of a development permit area to protect the coastal areas.
Are you moving that?
I just don't know how you get to do
Okay.
it without incurring a whole bunch of staff time. Back to Allison.
Well, I guess, again, I think a little bit like the recommendation we had a couple of meetings ago from the Climate Action Committee about, which we sort of talked about, and then it went back to the committee. I mean, if the committee's really keen on this, then they can do the research, come back with suggestions, parameters as to what the sorts of things are they're thinking should be covered. If it's but because there's an island plan section in there and talking about possible tools, I think we should just not do anything with this at this point. I don't know whether Sue Ellen's offering to pull it or just defer it.
Well,
I think we should, it should be pulled and referred back to the committee to provide more information on what it is they're thinking about.
Gary, just because I just put that forward, just a quick comment. Instead of this go back to committee, back to us, committee's not going to know what the staff involvement's going to be. It doesn't sound like from Liam, it would be too arduous to give us a bit of a general, just Cole's notes on if this is a good idea. Like I said, if the feasibility, benefits, and logistics make it sense for us to move forward before we start pushing this ball back to committees. I mean, if it's a no-go, it'd be good for us to know. If this is something that could work out and that may have benefits, that would be good for us to know too. And it doesn't sound like, I didn't get the impression from Liam, it's too much work for staff to give us a quick overview of this. And I think before moving this to different committees and back to us, I think this is probably the easiest way to go and the most direct route to go. Because if it's not feasible for us to do it through staff, I don't think there's any point moving it forward at all. So let's just get an idea of what's involved, what our staffing would be involved, and if it's going to be an effective tool. And if it looks like it could be, then we can move forward. Then we can have that discussion whether we want the direct staff to look at drafting something up. So.
Yeah, I'm going to, okay, go to Liam.
Yeah,
Thanks,
this is this second large body of work that's come forward to us through committee in a relatively recent amount of time. And not to detract from this topic, but perhaps it's something that we look into, that when committees are making recommendations to council to direct staff to do work, that committees need to pay a little more attention to the possible impacts on the staff time and the size of that recommendation. And so I think committees do excellent work, and I think it's a big function of the committee is to recommend work that council should consider. And so I appreciate committees bringing subjects like this forward, but maybe there's a way we can help committees better understand what the implications are of the work that they are suggesting, so that can be part of these types of recommendations when they come forward in the first place. And so that may be a bit of a side note, something for us to work on the side, but just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, thank you, Liam. And quite clearly, we're involved with a little bit of a process problem here. And I think it's, somebody recommended that we wait and see how the island plan comes out. And I think we want to move this forward. I think everybody wants to move this forward. All the ecological protections and that sort of thing. There's no question we're going to move it forward. I just don't think that this is the right avenue to go down to move it forward at this time. And to Rob's point, I think is good. I don't know how we do that without, first of all, giving staff something to work with. It's also vague right now. That's the problem. We can't just throw it out there without sort of putting something on paper that says, here's what we want to look at. So I think it's a little vague, and I think we just have to get it back together, but let's not forget about it and let's move it forward in a different form. Sue Ellen.
Yeah, I'm okay with that actually, because I wasn't sure if I could talk about the draft island plan, and certainly the committee doesn't know what we're thinking about. And so I'm happy to, I haven't made the motion. I'll just defer this. So we'll take it away. We can do the islands plan first, and we can get information from staff about the feasibility, the logistics and the benefits. If that follows on from our approved island plan, we'll have a chance to discuss that in front of council. And so you have the committee's recommendation in front of you and mine, but you don't have to take any action. And I look forward to our conversations in the island plan, if that suits everybody. But this is something that I know a lot of islanders are really interested in, especially since the clearing and the big tree at the fire hall site and that kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have been getting it, but people are stopping me on the trail and saying, how could you let that happen? I think people are, anyway, people are looking to me to protect nature. And so I wanted to bring it up to council as an option with the recommendations of the committee. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I think it's been a good discussion. I think we've learned a lot here, and it's definitely going to go forward. But I think that's the way to go, and we'll move on from here then. If everybody's okay with that, thank you. And so we'll go on to B of that, which is the 2021 work plan. The recommendation from the Parks, Trails, Greenway Advisory Committee is that council received the Parks, Trails, and Greenway Advisory Committee 2021 work plan for information. Anybody have any comments on that? Sue Ellen, is your hand up from the last time, or?
Sorry,
Okay,
it was just from before.
okay, Allison?
A curiosity question. I didn't dig out the Parks, Trails, and Greenways master plan, but maybe I should have. Is the strategic action column actually strategic actions that are in that plan? I mean, how does this plan relate to advancing the Parks and Trails master plan and advancing our strategic plan, the island plan?
If I can respond.
Sure, go ahead, Sue Ellen.
I believe that the work plan is based on this parks plan.
Yeah.
And that's the, it's all divided up like the OCP and like many plans into goals and objectives. And recommendations, and it even has a bit of implementation strategy and budgeting and stuff at the back. So this is what it's based on. Thank you.
So
All right,
the way it's presented without actually going through the plan itself, you don't know whether this is advancing particular steps or recommendations or actions in the plan. So for future, I think for us, for when we're getting work plans, it would be nice to have them referenced to the actual actions and steps that are in the plan itself, which I think is what happens when we get reports on the transportation plan.
Okay,
We're just receiving this for information, but
yeah,
I have, no idea whether it's advancing the plan or not, the way it's written.
Sue Ellen, can you respond to that?
He already has, Gary.
Okay.
Fine.
And then Maureen?
You're muted, Maureen.
If you look towards the end of the work plan, there's a summary of the committee's terms of reference, and it indicates prepare an annual work plan for approval by council and an annual report on work accomplished. And that tends to be a boilerplate statement in many of our committees, but we don't actually follow that very closely. And this plan is being presented to us for information, where our responsibility is actually to approve it. So some of the comments that Allison has made, I think, are very, very relevant. And this is not just to parks. This is relevant to all of our committees, where if the activities are not related to the area, parks, transportation, whatever, where they're not specifically related, and where they're not related to the strategic plan, then it's very hard for us as councillors to make that judgment about what kind of alignment is going on between the work of committees and the work of council. So, I mean, I'm happy to receive this for information, but I think my job actually is to receive it for approval. And again, that's not directed specifically to parks. It's a general comment regarding all of our committees.
Yeah, good point, Maureen. Thank you. So back to Sue Ellen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there's some shifting happening here as we've moved to bring more staff. And for example, Bonnie's position as the Environment and Parks Planner is a relatively new position. And there's been a transition period here. This is a work plan that was created by staff. So it's kind of different now from that direction to the committee to prepare an annual work plan. Now staff is bringing a draft annual work plan to the committee. So there's a bunch of things that need changing, and I'm not worried that this is outside of staff budget and plans, because they're the ones that actually brought it to the committee. And so I think it's a kind of transition of how committees, advisory committees, and which used to be volunteer committees, and staff and our new, evolving staff structure are working together. And so, I think fair comments. And I also am not convinced that those, the terms of reference probably should be updated, because I don't think it reflects exactly what's going on. Now we have the Maggie Cumming Legacy Fund, for example. There's other work that staff are kind of easing into that work now. They're taking that role. So there's different, the things are shifting a little bit. So it's probably a good time to look at this through your committee work, your committee project. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any other comments? Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, Maureen and I are working on these committees, and I actually, when I looked through this work plan, we've been asked to receive this. Yet, for better or for worse, that sentence about the annual work plan for approval, an annual report on work accomplished. I looked at the document submitted, and quite frankly, I'm not quite sure what it is we're meant to be receiving. If we have to receive it, I guess we receive it. I don't know. But it highlights very clearly, I think, a piece of work that Maureen and I need to do on the clarification of this, because this document, I'm actually really not quite sure what it is. When I see under methods, writing campaign, what does that mean? Meet when possible on walkabouts. Fair enough, it is what it is, but it certainly doesn't help me or provide any direction that I see. And I hope if this is reflected in the other committees as well, then we certainly do have a job of work on our hands. So if receiving it is just receiving it, so be it. But really, I have to say, I'm actually not quite sure exactly what the purpose is of the document that I'm receiving. Anyway, no matter, if we want to receive it, I'm okay with that. But it just shows what a lot of work we've got to do on this subject.
I also think, if I can just jump in, I wasn't prepared to present this work plan. Had I known that that's what council would be looking to me to do, I could have done that. This is normally something that I think I was expecting perhaps staff to do, or that council would just receive it as I read in the agenda. So there's some, I'd be happy to help council understand it better and explain some of these things if you like. The writing campaign is the members of the advisory committee taking on an educational role, volunteering to write little articles that will go through our communications through staff first, and then through the communications stream. to introduce and make sure that in these COVID times, Bowen Islanders know about all the outdoor recreation and nature connection possibilities there are provided for them by the municipality. So it's education, it's stewardship, those kinds of things. I can't remember what your other question was, and but I'd be happy to explain anything if there are other questions.
Yeah, I think what Michael's saying is we can receive this, but are we approving it? If we receive it, are we actually approving the work plan? The committee's terms of reference, yeah, you said that those should change because you've changed what you're doing, but the committee's terms of reference are actually what the committee was designed to do. So that's a funny sort of dichotomy switch around there. Yeah, the bottom line is that it's an advisory committee to council. So how far you want to go outside and how far the public communication, that sort of thing, which is all good. There's no question about that. But yeah, I don't know. There seems to be a little bit of confusion here.
I think the confusion is that was nobody here to present it to you and help council to understand it. So I can take the time to go through it line by line as much as I remember. I'm not able to be at every meeting, but if council would like me to do that so that you can approve it, I would do that.
Well, we're not going to approve it. We're just going to receive it. But I think by receiving it, we are approving it.
For information, though.
Well, yeah, for information. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd like to move the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you.
Second.
Yeah, because as Sue Ellen has pointed out, we're probably in a period of slight flux.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it would not be fair to do anything more with this work plan at this point, I think.
I second that, Gary.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rob. Okay, so any further discussion? No. I will ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We're going to go on to new business, the CAO update. Liam Edwards, Chief Administrative Officer. Go ahead, Liam.
Hi, folks. I don't have anything in terms of updates for you at this time.
All right. Thanks, Liam. And update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Metro Vancouver Director David Hawking. David?
Thanks, Gary. We had a Metro Vancouver retreat last weekend, although we just retreated to our own homes and did it all on Zoom and little groups and all the rest of it. Basically, what we did is we took a look at the strategic plan, which was now, we're halfway through the term, and looked at, okay, what sort of things needed adjusting with what we've learned over the last couple of years. And the emphasis was really on equity and also quite a little bit of work on First Nations issues and on reconciliation. And the equity, really where that came from was a recognition that in the pandemic, we weren't all affected in the same way. It really, we've got an emergency situation, and some people were, were able to manage quite easily. Somebody like me, where I could work from home, whereas others are frontline workers, or they might be in difficult situations without a home and so on. So life was much more difficult. So it kind of looked at all elements of the plan from that perspective. I'm not going to go through all the pieces now, that would be silly, but I will go through any changes to the strategic plan when, the recommendations. We went through it then in as an entire group in plenary and made suggestions to the strategic plan to changes to it. Staff will take that and bring it back to the board in a future meeting. So I'll talk about it then. There was also a board meeting before that, and one of the points for Howe Sound, the endorsement of the Howe Sound Biosphere as a host society for the Howe Sound Ocean Watch Action Committee, as recommended by the Howe Sound Community Forum, which Bowen Island has supported. There was also a Climate Action Committee meeting, and there were two pretty big really big reports and important reports. One was the draft Clean Air Plan, and so that looks forward 10 years at issues around both climate change, both greenhouse gas emissions, but also air contaminants that have direct health problems or indirect health problems at times. And I won't go into the details of that, but it's quite a remarkable document. And if anybody is interested, there's a webinar on it tomorrow where it will be presented. If you want to have a look at the webinar, just Google Metro Vancouver, then go Climate 2050. And on those pages, you'll see the mention of the webinar, and you can just sign up for it. And you'll get an ID that allows you to pop in at 10:30 tomorrow. It's an hour long. What happens is there'll be a presentation by staff, very similar to the one that we had at the Climate Action Committee meeting. And then there will be questions through the chat box. And there's a moderator who just pulls the questions out from the chat box, and it goes back to the senior staff. So it's the other, I don't know, I know Maureen's been at some of the webinars. They're really well done. And it would be really advisable for anybody who wants to have a look at this tomorrow at 10:30. The other thing that was on the agenda was, so Metro Vancouver, the Climate Action Committee, and and working together with staff have set that a very aggressive target for the same as the federal government's target, the same as Bowen Island's target of zero emissions, net zero emissions by 2050. And then they're developing roadmaps of how to do that in 10 different chunks of our life and the economy. And the first roadmap was released last week on buildings. And so there are all sorts of actions, and I won't get into any of the details because it's really complicated. There's all sorts of things that are being done. But if anyone is interested, because of course all of this can apply to buildings on Bowen Island, again, I can send you the link if you want to the report on this. It's a big report. It's got all sorts of policies, all sorts of ideas, recommendations to other levels of government, but with all of the action that is being done. Instead of getting to the target of, the preliminary target is 45% reduction by 2030, it's about a 15% reduction by 2030. So it's a demonstration of how much work is ahead to meet these kinds of targets, and how even with all the technologies and the policies that we can think of today, it's not enough, that more needs to be done. And there are people working on longer term new ideas. So if anyone's interested, I could send you the link. I guess that's what I'll do. I'll send everybody the link. Oh, Hope has done it.
Oh, good.
Hope has done it in
Oh, that's the clean air presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you were sending the link on?
Well, that's what Hope's done. I could send a link to the buildings roadmap as well. So I'll do that.
Yeah, that's the one I would, yeah.
Unless Hope does it before me, which she probably will. Okay, so that's it for me, Gary. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much, David. And update to council on Island's trust business. Island Trust Municipal Trustees Fast and Kale.
Can I go ahead?
Please do.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Salal.
Sure, I'll keep it short. We have I was in executive committee meeting today, this morning, and that's because we're coming up to, well, part of the business was coming up to Trust Council, which is all day tomorrow, workshop on the policy updates, the trust policy statement update, and then 2 days of big meeting. We've got to pass our budget. And so as you may know, the Islands Trust has an operating budget approximately the same as Bowen Municipality, about $8 million. We don't have all the capital side of it, although I would say we do in a way, because we have all kinds of land protected in nature reserves. And that comes to us through donations, though that's through the charitable arm. However, we've got to pass our budget. And we've got and that all goes towards the extra layer of nature and sustainability protection. And that's part of what the discussion will be about tomorrow is, should it just be nature and ecological protection, or should we also include sustainable communities? So that'll be an interesting discussion that trustees will be having tomorrow. And then There's other things in our in 12.11 of our information items here. Some of them are already happened, but the agenda package and the schedule is there on pages 90 and 91. And Islands Trust Conservancy report, just to let you know, I'm vice chair again. And we are hiring a species at risk coordinator with that big grant from the federal government sometime by the end of March. And we made a $5,000 grant to the Bowen Island Conservancy. I think I reported that earlier, but these are the kinds of things you'll find in there, including the details about the new nature reserve on our neighboring island, Keats Island, next door. That relates to goal 3 of the Bowen Island Conservancy plan, science-based regional conservation plan. That's it for me.
All right, Sue Ellen. Michael? Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Sue Ellen, for talking about the next 3 days. By the way, for those who are pretty aware of Island Trust, I can tell you over the next 3 days, 26 people will be meeting on a Zoom conference with a meeting package of 908 pages. And that's a pretty significant package. And I'm sure Sue Ellen will agree with me on that. I've been reporting back on the progress of the Islands Trust Management and Governance Review. And I spoke to the steering committee chair this afternoon, and we've been working on the consultant's proposal through BC Bid, and we've been working closely, attending all the meetings has been Peter Luckham, the chair of Islands Trust, and Russ Hodgson-Spiller, their CAO. Anyway, I was very pleased to be able to tell you that as of tomorrow, the bid for the consultants to complete this review will be posted, and that post will close on the 2nd of April. And that is now the good folk from BC Bid assured our chair that it will be posted tomorrow. So I'm really pleased to hear of that. Now, the telephone lines have been ringing pretty much off the hook between the steering group individually and the rest, because somewhat sadly, we're aware that this review was passed only by a very small majority, and there is an effort to actually defund this review, which of course will be strongly contested by the people who have put it forward, and it was approved by Trust Council. So the next 3 days, in more ways than one, will be pivotal, because I will say this, that my most earnest hope is that the review of the Island Trust goes ahead as agreed by Trust Council in December. If for any reason, and I choose my words carefully, but with full agreement of people on the steering committee, because I told them I would be reporting this tonight, that if it is in any way defunded or derailed, it will certainly cause one of the biggest splits and one of the major causes of division amongst the Island Trust trustees, probably since the beginning of time for the trust. So my earnest hope is it'll go ahead unimpeded and as approved by Trust Council on December the 3rd, 2020. I will, of course, be reporting back. The next days are important, not just for this, but for the other causes that Sue Ellen mentioned. So more to follow, as we say. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Michael. And 11.4 is an update to Council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meetings. Councillor Nicholson, Maureen, go ahead.
I included the agenda for our next meeting, which will be on this Wednesday. And there are two things I'll draw your attention to. in advance of the meeting. One is that Metro is undertaking an update of the regional parks plan. And the objective with this update is to come up with a plan that will guide delivery of the park service over the next 30 years with a 10-year implementation schedule included as well. Part of what they're doing is they're going to confirm that regional parks mandate of protect and connect is still the should still be the mandate, or whether there are additional public values or alternative public values for regional parks that also need to be taken into account. So if the draft plan is approved, the plan to develop the update, then work will begin this spring, and there will be engagement with the municipalities in the late summer, I think is probably likely. The second thing in the report is that there is in the manager's report a brief reference to the Davies Orchard project. So this will be the first official notice that Parks Committee members will have received regarding the 450,000 infrastructure, heritage infrastructure grant. And the way that it's being described is interesting. Park staff are working with the province to confirm the scope, the timing, and delivery requirements for the grant. And staff will update project plans and develop an implementation strategy. And here's the important part: working closely with Bowen Island municipality to share information and explore opportunities for collaboration. And then there's just a blurb about the Parks Committee will be kept informed. So it will be interesting to see how this is received. The project as proposed was in the neighborhood of 2 million, if you recall. So this funding accounts for a quarter of the proposed project from 2018, and the direction, well, who knows what the direction will be, but it will be in consultation with the municipality.
All right, thanks, Maureen. Was there a time limit on the grant?
2 years roughly.
Time restriction on it? No?
2 years.
2 years, okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And 11.5 is an update to council on TransLink Mayor's Council meetings. Councillor Allison Morse.
Okay, we've got the on table item that got sent around today, which was the pre-budget submission news release for to the federal budget, which is, I don't have a date for it yet, so I'm not sure when it's going to come out. And basically you'll see in that they're asking for the funds that were sort of noted in the last comments from the Prime Minister that go to the Surrey Lang SkyTrain project and the low carbon fleet strategy, and that's the purchase of electric buses. So battery operated, battery electric buses. So that's good. And then the other was at the meeting last week, we had a very interesting presentation on what's been done with to make the buses go faster and be more on schedule. And you'll see bus bulbs being built and dedicated lanes and things like that. And it's amazing. You know, it may sound like a very small amount of time, but it makes the bus go faster. And overall, it really is more efficient from a dollars and cents and is good for riders. So, and then, so that's, and then there was discussion on the budget. So that's basically, they're still working with the province to define just what the province intends to do with as they announce the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project during the election, that they would be taking it over and operating it, but it's still very much in the, okay, how's that going to work stages.
Yeah. Is that it, Allison?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your update. And 11.6 is to move to a closed council meeting. The recommendation is a council move to a closed council meeting immediately following the adjournment of the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 90-1D and DJ and L of the community charter. I will move that. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. I got you. And all in favor? Thank you. Everybody's in favor. We'll move on. You see the information items there. Question period. I don't think we have anybody hanging in there, do we?
We lost them all, if we had
Okay.
anybody.
On that happy note, and look at that, we're 7 minutes ahead. So we will adjourn. Does everybody want a 5-minute break?
Yes, please.
And we'll get back in here at 8:05. Is that
Right
right,
now.
everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you, everybody.
It's the same meeting, right? Not a different Zoom?
No, it's a different Zoom, isn't it?
A
Yeah,
different
Like
Zoom.
it's in your calendar. Yeah.
Right.